Fixed income markets, issuance, trading and funding. We have end of chapter questions from your CFA curriculum. First question. In most countries, the bond market sector with the smallest amount of bonds outstanding is most likely the governmental sector's major government spendings are financed by bond issue. Financial corporate sector raises funding by bond issue. So government sector and financial corporate sector, they are primarily funded by bonds. So the smallest amount of bonds outstanding you will find are from non-financial corporate sector. Let's say if this pie represents the overall bonds in issue, so maybe out of this much relates to non-financial corporate sector. Rest of it would be government and financial sector bonds. So the smallest amount of bonds outstanding almost everywhere, that's in our part of the world, non-financial corporate sector, they have very limited share in the bond market. So that makes C to be the correct option. Next, the distinction between investment grade, if you remember, AAA, as per Moody's, A and 2 small a's. The distinction between investment grade debt and non-investment grade debt is best described by the differences in investment grade and non-investment grade. This segregation is not based upon the tax status. Tax is an inevitability. Death cannot be avoided. Tax, likewise, cannot be avoided. So whether it's an investment grade debt or non-investment grade debt, interest, whether you have received as an income, is taxable. Interest you have paid, even if it's not paid, like zero coupon bonds, it is charged as an expense in your income statement, and it is allowed as a tax deductible expense. So tax status, this is not segregation with regard to tax deductibility or tax status. This is incorrect. Investment grade and non-investment grade, this segregation is not based upon maturity. It is based upon the credit quality. High credit quality bonds is investment grade, and the low credit quality bond are non-investment grade. So that makes B to be our correct option. A bond issued internationally outside the jurisdiction of the country in whose currency the bond is denominated is best described as, just like the example we discussed yesterday, a Pakistani company registered and issued bonds in India in dollars, right? This is a euro bond, right? Then what is a foreign bond then? If a Pakistani based company issued INR based, Indian rupee based bonds in India, then it's a foreign bond, right? And as we know, municipal bonds are the bonds issued by the municipal corporation, local governments, local state governments. So we are talking about a bond issued internationally outside the jurisdiction of the country in whose currency the bond is denominated. It's a euro bond, A. When classified by type of issuer, asset-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations, all these are a part of structured finance sector. We'll discuss this in detail as it comes. Right now, just keep it the way it is. Next. Compared with developed market bonds, like in the US, UK, emerging market bonds most likely offer lower yields. No, lower yields are prevalent in the US, UK. Since the markets are well developed, so the yields are lower there. Emerging market bonds most likely exhibit high risk, true, and that is the reason the bonds in emerging markets offer higher yields. Then why not C? Compared with developed market bonds, emerging market bonds most likely benefit from lower growth prospects. No, in fact, emerging markets are emerging. Why? Because they have higher growth prospects. So that's not true basically. So emerging markets exhibit high risk and hence they have higher yields there. So B is the right option. Next, with respect to floating rate bonds, a reference rate such as London Interbank Offered Rate is most likely used to determine the bond's reference rate is used to determine the coupon rate. Like if it's a floating rate bond, so reference rate plus 1.5%. So this is how we determine the coupon rate on floating rate bonds or floating rate notes. So London LIBOR is most likely to be used as a reference rate to determine the coupon rate, not the spread, and not directly for, yes, a 90 days reference rate LIBOR is selected. Why? Because the coupon rate is reset after every 90 days. So, but this is not the reason why we select LIBOR. LIBOR is a reference rate to determine the coupon rate, not the frequency doesn't determine the selection of coupon rate. That makes B to be the correct option. The variability of coupon rate on LIBOR-based floating rate bond is most likely due to coupon rate. Just like in the previous case, when you say a floating rate bonds, the coupon rate changes after every 90 days. Why is it so? Because as per the bond indenture, floating rate bonds, its 90-day floating rate, coupon rate will be adjusted after every 90 days or after 180 days. So the variability of coupon rate on LIBOR-based floating rate bond is most likely due to periodic reset of reference rate. Reference rate has to be reset. LIBOR, when changes after every 90 days or whatever the coupon rate has been set in indenture, so periodic resets are essential. So that's why when the reset is made, the coupon rate would change as well in the floating rate bond. So that makes A to be the correct option. And you must have a very good reason why have we rejected B and C. Which of the following statements is most accurate? An interbank offered rate is a single reference rate? No. We discussed in our reading that LIBOR is not a single rate, it's a set of rates. Right? It's a set of rates, not a single reference rate. Incorrect. Applies to borrower's period up to 10 years. It's up to 1 year, not up to 10 years. LIBOR up to 1 year. Is used as a reference rate for interest rate swaps. Yes, that we will discuss in derivatives. CDOs is coming, interest rate swaps, interest rate futures, call put, they are all coming. So just for the sake of understanding, keep it in mind that we use interbank offered rate used as a reference rate for interest rate swaps. Just let me give you an idea. A and B have taken on loans. A has taken on loan on variable rate, that is reference rate plus 2.5%, and B has taken a loan on a fixed rate, let's say 6%. So they may end up agreeing, swapping these interest payments with each other. This is called interest rate swap. We'll discuss in detail as we go along, but for the time being, we use this as a reference rate for interest rate swap, so that makes C to be the correct option. Next, an investment bank that underwrites a bond issue, takes on the bonds and sells it in the market, is most likely what he will do. Yes, that's a textbook approach. There were two, we discussed this in the reading, either it's an underwriting arrangement or the other was commission based. The best effort. You sell, you get commission. In underwriting, the investment bank buys all the bonds and resells the new issued bonds to investors or dealers. It's a textbook question, so straightforward A is the right option, and you will have a good reason for rejecting the other options. In major developed bond markets, newly issued sovereign bonds are most often sold to the public via private placement. No. Best effort offering. No. Remember, sovereign bonds are backed by the taxing authority of the central bank, issued by the treasury. So they are sold directly to the public through auction. They do not need private placements, not that they are being sold to special individualized customers or through investment banks. So they are sold through auction, through dealers. So it is a textbook question, straightforward A is the right answer. Which of the following describes privately placed bonds? Privately placed bonds where the issuing organization sell these bonds to individual investors or group of individuals. So in that case, there is no need of underwriting, there is no need of registration. Private placement does not require registration with SEC. We discussed this in the text. Which of the following describe privately placed bonds? They are non-underwritten, no underwriting is required, straight you are selling to the buyers, and there is no registration required, statement to be filed with SEC. Right? So that makes A to be the correct option. A mechanism by which an issuer may be able to offer additional bonds to the general public without preparing a new and separate offering circular best describes. Registration statement is to be placed once and you can issue bonds for a stated period of time whenever you want to. So this is shelf registration. This is shelf. It's a straight textbook based question. Which of the following statement related to secondary bond market is most accurate? When bonds are issued for the first time, newly issued, they are in the primary market. And when the bonds change hands between traders and investors, it is the secondary market. So newly issued corporate bonds are issued to secondary bond markets. It's a primary issue. Secondary bond markets are where bonds are traded between investor A, B, C. Bonds are changing hands between different investors. So that is a correct description of secondary market. C. The major participants in secondary bond markets globally are retail investors. Wrong. The bond markets are dominated by large financial institutions. So this is not the right. Retail investors, banks are dominant player in the bond market. So this is incorrect. So that makes B to be the correct option. See here, large institutional investors and central banks are involved in the bond markets. So moving on to the next question. A bond market in which communication network matches buy and sell orders initiated from various locations is best described as not a physical exchange organized physical place, not an open market operation, over-the-counter market where buy and sell orders are initiated from different locations, probably across the world, and they are managed through a system of automatic order placement communication networks like NASDAQ. So this is OTC basically. Textbook approach, C is the right option. A liquid secondary bond market allows an investor to sell a bond at, if the market is liquid and an investor wants to sell the bond, it will allow an investor to sell a bond at a desired price. He can sell the bond at any price he wants. The price has to be determined by the market. A price at least equal to the purchase price. Not necessarily that he purchased the bond at 100, so he will be able to sell the bond at 100. A liquid secondary bond market allows an investor to sell a bond at a price close to the bond's fair market value. If the market is liquid, so you will be able to sell a bond close to the fair market value. This is the perfect statement. Not necessarily the price you want, not necessarily the price you originally paid, rather a price close to the current prevailing fair market price. C, perfect option without any doubt. Corporate bond secondary market trading most often occurs on a book entry basis, as we just discussed earlier, that it's an OTC market. Corporate bonds are traded in over-the-counter market, and we just discussed in the previous question that we use electronic trading platform through which different buyers and sellers they interact and then they transactions settle. So it's on a book entry basis through electronic trading platforms. So look no further, not organized physical exchanges, rather through a digitized system. So that makes OTC-A to be the correct option. Sovereign bonds, bonds issued by the central federal governments backed by the taxing authority of the government, issued by the treasury. So sovereign bonds are best described as bonds issued by local governments. No, these are not the sovereign bonds. They are non-sovereign government bonds. Non-sovereign government bonds. Wrong. Secured obligations of a national government. No. Sovereign bonds are not secured. There is no collateral behind sovereign bonds. What is behind it? The government standing, government taxing authority. This is wrong. Sovereign bonds are not secured. That makes option B to be incorrect. Then sovereign bonds are best described as bond backed by, yes, backed by the taxing authority of the national government. They are backed by the taxing authority, not any collateral. That was the reason we rejected B. So that makes C to be our correct option. Which factor is associated with a more favorable quality sovereign bonds credit rating? Which factor is associated with more favorable quality sovereign bonds credit rating? Issued in local currency only. Issuance in local currency only doesn't mean that there is a favorable quality of sovereign bond. Local currency is one of the elements. Strong domestic saving base. Yes, these two will give a more favorable quality sovereign bond credit rating. That the bonds are issued in the local currency, in the US dollar, within the US, and there is a strong domestic saving base. People will use their cash to purchase these bonds. So these two, if they are existing, it will result in more favorable quality sovereign bonds credit rating. That makes C to be the correct option. Which type of sovereign bonds has the lowest interest rate risk for an investor? Lowest interest rate risk. You are an investor. If coupon bonds, which are fixed, interest rate goes up, your bond value will fall. Interest rate volatility will also affect the valuation of discounted bonds. But when the interest rate change, floaters will adjust accordingly. Which type of sovereign bond has the lowest interest rate risk for an investor? Floaters. Floaters means that the interest rate is reset periodically based on changes in the reference rate that we have used, LIBOR. So this would result in the lowest interest rate risk because your interest is moving with the market. So you're not worried about the market volatility. So that makes A to be the correct option. Agency bonds, quasi-government, if you remember, they are not local government. They will be called non-sovereign government bonds. National government, they are the sovereign bonds. We were talking about the state-sponsored agencies. Agency bonds are issued by quasi-government entities. So that makes C to be the correct option. The type of bonds issued by multinational agencies such as International Monetary Fund is best described as, it's not a sovereign bond. It is not a quasi-government bond. It's a supranational bond. IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, the bond issued by these multilateral entities are called supranational bonds. B. Next, a bond issued by a local government authority, typically without an explicit funding commitment from the national government, is most likely classified as non-sovereign government bond. These are issued by the central government backed by taxing authority. Quasi-government bonds issued by the government agencies. So local government authorities issue non-sovereign government bonds. C is the right classification. Next, which of the following statements relating to commercial paper is most accurate? There is no secondary market for trading commercial paper. They might be of large denomination. At least one commercial paper could be at least 1 million. But still, there is an active market, so this is not a right option. There is secondary market for trading commercial paper. Wrong. Only the strongest, highly rated companies issue commercial paper. We discussed this in our reading. It is not the criteria that you have to be the strongest and highly rated companies to issue commercial bonds. Listed firms can issue commercial bonds, but it depends upon, would you find the buyers? Highly rated companies, strongest, they will get buyers. But those who are not highly rated, still they can issue bonds. It all depends upon the individuals who will be willing to buy. So this is not the right criteria that only the strongest and highly rated companies issue commercial bonds. Wrong. So commercial paper is a source of interim financing for long-term projects. Correct. That's why it's called bridge financing. It's an intermediate way before a company goes for a larger funding. That is the right statement. C is correct. Next, Euro commercial paper is most likely Euro commercial paper issued outside the US. It is denominated in euro, just like euro dollar is not always denominated in euro. So it doesn't mean Euro commercial paper is denominated in euro. It is issued on discount basis, not necessarily. Remember, commercial paper in the US, they are issued at discount basis. But commercial paper outside US could be issued on discount basis, or they could be issued on yield basis, right? A bond could be issued at 98, commercial paper at 98 to be redeemed at 100, or issued at 100 and redeemed at 102. So it's not necessarily they are issued at discount basis. So this is not true. So yes, it is negotiable. Commercial paper, whether in the US or ECP or Euro commercial paper, they are both negotiable. They can change hands. A is the right option. Then, for the issuer, a sinking fund arrangement is most similar to, we discussed this a little while ago in our reading, sinking fund is similar to serial maturity structure. In sinking fund, the bonds are redeemed in pieces, and serial maturity is similar to it. So it's a textbook question. A good reading of text would help you solve do question like these. When issuing debt, a company may use sinking fund arrangement as a means of what? Inflation. Sinking fund is not for inflation. It is not for interest rate. Sinking fund arrangement is that sufficient fund could be arranged, set aside so that the bonds could be redeemed. So this is basically to reduce the credit risk, not for inflation risk or interest rate risk. So A is the right option. Next, which of the following is the source of wholesale funds for bank? Wholesale funds. Demand deposits, they are mostly from retail depositors. Money market accounts, again they are from retail sector. Negotiable certificate of deposits, CDs, they can be of two types, negotiable and non-negotiable. Non-negotiable means they can't be traded, and if you need to get the cash back from the issuing authority, there's a penalty that involves a reduction in the amount paid back. And negotiable certificate of deposit, they can be traded. So yes, this is one of the major source of wholesale funds for the bank. These are not. A characteristic of negotiable certificate of deposit, as I said a little while ago, they are mostly available in small denomination. No, they are large, at least $1 million. So this is wrong. They can be sold in open market prior to maturity. True, that is true. That is why it's negotiable. Can be traded in the market, sold, bought. Correct. A penalty is imposed if the depositor withdraws funds prior to maturity. That is in the form of non-negotiable. C is a characteristic of non-negotiable. So that means they can be sold in the open market is a feature of negotiable. This is non-negotiable, and this statement is incorrect because they are at least for $1 million. So that makes B to be our correct option. A repurchase agreement is most comparable to, as we discussed in our reading, it is like a collateralized loan, where holder of a security gives security as a collateral and takes loan, and on the date of maturity he pays the original amount back plus interest and takes the possession of his securities back. So repurchase agreement, repo agreements, effectively they are collateralized loan, and we discussed this in our reading. So that makes B to be our correct option. Repo margin. Securities with market value $470,000 were sold to the lender at $450. This gap of $20,000 is what you call the repo margin. What's the repo margin? It is $470, $450 negotiated between the counterparties. Which counterparty? The lender and the borrower. established independently of the market related conditions, not established by the market, it's entirely dependent upon the party. As I said, that repo agreements are not regulated, it's highly one-on-one basis, so it's not determined by the market. Structured on an agreement assuming equal credit risk to all counterparties. Again, incorrect. It's negotiated between counterparties. Straightforward question. Textbook approach A is the right answer. A repo margin or repurchase on a repurchase agreement is most likely to be lower. The underlying collateral is in short supply. We discussed this a little while ago. If the underlying collateral is short in supply, it means it's valuable, collateral is valuable. Hence, a $470,000 market value collateral, you might get a loan on $465,000. See, the margin, the repo margin is very small, just $5,000. So the underlying collateral is in short supply. In that case, the repo margin will be lower. And if it is in significant supply, then the repo margin would be higher. So that's a straight book, textbook approach question. So A is the right answer, and it ends all your EOCs related to fixed income securities, issuance, trading, and funding.